All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to biology. It is, of course, a little bit unorthodox today, considering that I'm teaching virtually. You can see that I am in a rather mediocre hotel in the beautiful state of Maryland. It is hot and humid here, just like it is in Florida, so I didn't escape anything. I'll be attending my wife's aunt's funeral tomorrow, so I do appreciate your prayers for us, and I do appreciate your patience with me and your kindness that you can give the substitute at this time. There are a lot of things that can hinder your education today. One of those things is my own dumb fault, and that is the fact that I forgot my lesson plans. So I've forgotten a lot of things, actually. I was hasty to get out on Friday, and I believe I also forgot, unfortunately, to print your notes. Now, that may not be true. I may have had a sudden moment of inspiration to print out your notes, and if that's true, the substitute can pause this video and pass those notes out now, and I hope that is true, but I don't remember, and I don't think so. So I might have to, have the substitute simply listen in on this video lesson, and you're just going to have to kind of highlight in your book. And I can get you the notes when you get back, okay? When I get back, that is. I do intend to be back on Wednesday, and I'm hoping that everything can go smoothly from there on. All right, well, we are going to be starting, if you would like to start with me, on page number 19, the structure and function of leaves. And of course, if you have your notes, that is something that would be a lot better. But let's start the following things. Design with a purpose. God made plants to have cells. Cells form tissues. Tissues form organs. In fact, all multicellular things function this way. You have cells, tissues, and organs. For instance, you have a cardiac cell. A tissue would be like cardiac tissue, and an organ in your cardiac tissues would be your heart. And of course, you even have organ systems like plants do. Plants have systems, group of structures designed to function as a unit. Your heart is a part of the circulatory system, which circulates blood throughout your body to give you the proper amount of oxygen that your cells need. Plants do not have 11 systems like we do, like the cardiovascular system, the integumentary system. They only have 2, and that is the root system and the shoot system, the part below ground and the part above ground. And obviously they have some very different purposes. The root system has the purpose to anchor the plant. It has the purpose to collect nutrients from the ground, particularly water from the ground, and to move that nutrient-rich water upwards. And the shoot system intends to grow the plant really tall, to tower over above all the other plants, so it has good access to sunlight where it can do photosynthesis. Now, this diagram will be on your quiz tomorrow, and it will be on your test coming up actually rather soon. If I remember correctly, it's sometime either on next Monday or Tuesday. And this parts of the leaf, you have the apex, the very top portion of the leaf, the margin, the very outside portion of the leaf, the veins, which allow the glucose made from photosynthesis to travel through to the petiole, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, to twig, to the tree itself. The base is the bottom part. The petiole extends the leaf off from the plant. That's useful for photosynthesis. It extends off the plant to get a little bit more surface area and get a little bit more access to sunlight. And the axil bud and stipule will not be on the quiz or test, but the axil bud is where the plant actually grows from, and it is a little portion that the tree hollows out that the leaf can extend from. Plants occasionally do not have petioles, and they are referred to as sessile, meaning they, in the animal kingdom we use sessile to mean something that doesn't move. In the plant kingdom, it's referring to something that does not move away from the tree. There's also different types of leaves. You have simple leaves. A simple leaf has one blade per petiole. A compound leaf has multiple blades per petiole. And these leaves are called leaflets. And so maybe you've seen some broadleaf trees. Some of them have these type of leaves, and some of them have these with leaflets. Now, we commonly refer to these as leaves, but that's actually technically incorrect. On a compound leaf, this is the whole leaf, and this here is a leaflet. Now, if you would turn to me, regardless of whether or not you have your notes or not, please turn to page number 21, and you see a text box there. The text box has 5 key terms, and the ones that we are going to look at and the ones that are most important to us are the terms opposite, alternate, world, and reset. I'm going to give you some time now to write in your notes, if you have them, the meanings of these things. Opposite meaning that the leaves are attached at right angles, directly above and below. Maples, etc. have opposite leaves. They branch off opposite each other. Alternate is alternate. It goes one leaf here, one leaf here, one leaf here, one leaf here. And you can see that an example would be an apple tree or an oak tree would have an alternate arrangement pattern. And I'd like you to not only write the description, but also draw that in your notes. Give yourself an example of what the opposite, alternate, world, and reset might look like. You will actually have to do so on your test. You're going to have to list and then draw an example. Not necessarily a specific example, just what it would appear like. So your sub can pause this video, and you can write in those things on page 22 right now. Assuming you've done those things, let's take a look at section 2.2, the internal structures of a leaf. And wow, it's going to throw a curveball at me and have these notes come one at a time. So, but that's okay. A tissue is a living material constructed in a way as to perform a particular task for the organs of an organism. Now, in humans, we have 3 different kinds of tissues. We have muscular tissues, we have connective tissues, we have nervous tissues, and epithelial tissues. And those are really easily recognizable in the human body. Plants, they have 3 different kinds of tissues. They have structural tissues, vascular tissues, and meristematic tissues. And these 3 form different things within a plant. Structure forms a body. Vascular forms the connecting and conducting materials. Meristematic produces new growth. And you can see on page 23 that there's even sub-tissues underneath these tissues. And we can go into these sub-tissues pretty drastically. go all the way down and research each one. I'm going to do that for the vascular tissue because these are really important. You see, the plant needs to move liquid inside itself. And liquid is called sap. And sap comes in different forms. You have water with minerals. You also have food materials. And some sap is kind of tasty, like maple sap. We can go through a certain process of transforming that into maple syrup that we can use to consume and enjoy that on our pancakes. But really, there's two types of vascular tissue. You have the xylem, which transports water upwards, and you have the phloem, which transports sugar downwards. Now you might be thinking, well, why does water need to move upwards and sugar need to move downwards? Well, as it turns out, water can be found in the ground, and the roots have to bring it upwards through the xylem, and phloem is made in the leaves, which are transported downwards to the roots. You see, the roots need sugars too. They just can't make them themselves. So the leaves give the roots the sugars they need to survive, and the roots give the leaves the water they need to survive. And it's very important. You can see that the xylem tubes are actually really, really large, generally speaking. That's because water is pretty easily conducted through capillarity up through these tubes. And the phloem tubes are actually pretty small. And they involve a lot of sugars going down at one time. And as the plant grows, sometimes these tubes clog up and new ones are created. And thus, really the cycle of plant life. You know, the plants get wider and wider and wider because the tubes within the central part of the plant actually get kind of clogged up, damaged, and they create new ones on the outside. That's why plants need to grow wide as well as tall. A couple of key terms here, and these terms are potential terms for your quiz tomorrow. Your quiz will have 10 questions on it. You have the epidermis. The epidermis covers and protects the upper and lower portions of the leaf. And we'll see that on a diagram in a minute. There are little spaces on the lower epidermis called the stomata. The stomata are leaf pores, allowing air to move in and out of the leaves. You see, oxygen fuels cellular respiration. We breathe in oxygen, and our cells are able to use that oxygen to rip apart the food we eat and respirate, create energy from it. And then, of course, when we breathe out, we're breathing out carbon dioxide, which is a waste byproduct from really the generation of energy in our cells. Well, this carbon dioxide is very useful for plants. Carbon dioxide fuels photosynthesis, and it is useful within the photosynthesis process. Now, photosynthesis is extremely complex. Extremely complex. And I might have some diagrams kind of detailing its complexities as we go on. And please understand that I don't need you to know every little intricacy of photosynthesis. There are words in the photosynthesis diagrams that I will show you that I can't even pronounce. I can't even try. They're like 30 letters long. And this process is an amazing testament to God's complexity of plants. I mean, just an amazing testament. The more we study, the more we realize how much we don't know and how much there is to know. And, of course, if you think about it that way, evolution could not have created such complexities. When things evolve, typically we see them downgrade. And I'll be explaining more about that in the biology classes. There are thousands of examples that we can see in nature. The stomata also regulates transpiration, or the loss of water vapor. Like doors, guard cells hold open the stomata when there's water to lose. When there's plenty of water, we want to do as much photosynthesis as possible. But if there's a drought, the stomata get closed through the guard cells because the guard cells want to conserve the amount of water that they have. Now, they're not reckless. They know that they don't always have access to water, so they really focus on photosynthesis when they do have water. Thus, of course, the best gardens are the ones that are watered 3 times a day. So there's plenty of water all the time for photosynthesis to occur. Leaf hairs come off of the leaf to impede water loss, defend against insects, and occasionally secrete toxic substances. So underneath the plant, there are these leaf hairs, and they want to stop water loss. They want to create an odd surface so insects can't climb on them. And occasionally they secrete some toxins, like you learned poison oak and ivy and sumac do so well. Now let's talk about leaf veins. As you can see on page 23, or actually 25, leaves actually have a lot of different types of veins. Now, I have pictured 3 different types of vein patterns because that's what your textbook says, but there are documented vein patterns. There's at least 10 of them that are documented. And I know of 5 myself. Venation, or different vein patterns, come in 3 different variations. You have parallel. Parallel runs, the veins run parallel up and down. Grasses are a great example of things that are parallel. Palms too, because they're monocots. And all monocots, I shouldn't say all, most display a parallel venation pattern. Then you have pinnate and palmate. Of course, this pinnate is pretty familiar among most dicots and broadleaf trees. They have one main central vein, and then several branching veins. And then palmate, they have several main veins, and lots of little branching side veins, you can say, maybe. Now, sorry, forgive my voice. I've been wearing a mask all day, and so my voice is kind of cracky. But here's a diagram, and you can find that diagram on page number 25. This diagram is important, and I'm not going to quiz you over this diagram tomorrow, but I will test you over this diagram. You'll have to fill in the blanks within this diagram on your test, so it is worth maybe highlighting or circling or starring in your notes. The leaf is very thin, right? But there's a lot that's going on underneath the thin layer of the leaf. You take a little cross section, and here's what you're going to see in the leaf. First, you're going to see the cuticle. The cuticle is a waxy layer on top of the leaf that protects the leaf really from a whole host of things. Really, its job is for protection. Then you have the epidermis. This epidermis is just one last layer of preventing the leaf from being harmed before we get into this, which can't protect, and that is the palisade mesophyll. Palisade mesophyll is where most of photosynthesis takes place. Sunlight hits the cuticle, hits the epidermis, and goes through both of those, and hits the palisade mesophyll. And 80+% of the photosynthesis generated by the plant is happening right here in this layer. But underneath the palisade mesophyll is a spongy mesophyll. It's mesophyll that are allowing airflow through so air can get to the palisade mesophyll, but still doing a little bit of photosynthesis themselves. It's kind of like a dual job. And so this spongy mesophyll does some photosynthesis, but really its job is more to let air through. You have the veins, which carry the sugars made from photosynthesis out of the cell. You have the lower epidermis, which protects the bottom part of the leaf, and the stomata, which are places that air can get through, particularly air like carbon dioxide, very necessary to fuel photosynthesis within the cell. And here is what that might look like underneath a microscope. And you can see actually pretty clear divisions of the cuticle, the epidermis, palisade mesophyll. They call it parenchyma. Some textbooks do. Both are correct. Spongy mesophyll or spongy parenchyma. The vascular bundles, which are very evident here. Little tubes which take the sugars out. And then you have the lower epidermis. And within the lower epidermis, you can see here an open stomata, among some other things. So this is pretty well documented, and something that is very much an interest of botanists is how we get photosynthesis to work. Now I believe this is the last slide. That's good because my voice is dying and I need some water. A plant cell is not like your cell. The cells in your body are very different. I don't know if you know what your cells look like, but I mean, some very obvious differences might be the shape. Your cells are rounded. That way they can go through the vessels without smacking into each other and causing some big, problem. It would be very bad if our cells were square. That would make us very vulnerable to things like heart attack and stroke. It turns out our cells are round and kind of slide off of one another pretty easily. You also have different organelles. You do not do photosynthesis in the chloroplast. That's a good thing. If you went outside and started glowing, you would get scared, right? You also see that the plant cell holds in its vacuole, a large central vacuole holds water. And our cells don't have to hold water because when we're thirsty, our cells just go tell us, get some water. Plant has to plan for weeks worth of drought and sometimes even months worth of drought without dying. And because of that, they have to store water in their cells. So those are just some basic differences between the plant and animal cell. You also see the cell wall here. Cell wall protects and not only protects but causes the plant cell to have structure. Our cells do not have a cell wall because we don't need as much structure in our cells. Chloroplasts are the tiny chemical factories that use chlorophyll to catch energy from light. A plant has a large central vacuole which is used to retain water for a long period of time. And because of those things, we have some very distinct differences between plant and animal cells. And you don't have to memorize this diagram. It's not going to be on your test. But we will have to compare plant and animal cells at some later point. You do have some homework tonight, and in order to avoid giving you too much, particularly while I'm away, we are going to combine both Section Review 2.1 and Section Review 2.2 into just one assignment where I give you certain questions, and that is Section Review 2.1, page 22, numbers 2 and 4. Section Review 2.2, page 27, numbers 1 through 5. And you probably still have a little bit of time left in class, as this recording is only about 24 minutes at this point, that you can get some of your homework done, and that you can really get some work caught up, okay? And hopefully you took a look at your test as well. If you didn't take a look at your test, maybe your teacher can pass them back. Now, she does not know your names, so you're going to have to respond when she says, hey, who is Lillian? Well, you're going to have to raise your hand and hopefully see your test grade. We will correct our tests when I get back on Wednesday. All right, 10th grade, have a wonderful day. And those of you who didn't take tests, please be studying for those. They will be due on Wednesday. Okay? Thank you very much for listening in.